Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Right. So if you've spoken a bit about Sheikh Uthman Dan Fodio already, but for the sake of those who don't really know much about him, why don't you give us a brief introduction to him? Like, where is he from? When did he live? Why do you think that he's an important figure in Islamic history, or recent Islamic history in particular, and why more people need to know more about him?
Yeah. What I've been searching for, and as part of the Irshad movement,
Hmm.
is to try to find balance.
Hmm.
Because as a young Daya, I came into the field. I left the Caribbean. I came back to Toronto and I became Imam of the Jami Mosque, which at that time was probably the largest mosque in Canada.
Hmm.
And all the schools of thought were there, all of the Islamic movements, everybody's in the room. Sufi, Salafi, Ikhwani, Tablighi, everybody is there. How do you unite this community?
Hmm.
And so I needed a balanced way, to be able to approach all these different levels within Islamic society. And Sheikh Uthman Dan Fodio was what I found to be that type of a scholar that Allah blessed
Hmm.
to give a balanced approach. And it is rare that you find somebody who has qualities like him.
Hmm.
As a young scholar, at 20 years old, he was considered to be faqih in Maliki fiqh,
Hmm.
and he went into the field. And he reached a level of spirituality where the Qadiriyya Tariqah in West Africa considered him to be a qutub. They
Hmm.
considered him to be on the highest level of spirituality.
Hmm.
So he was, in a sense, a very scholarly person. And within the first 30 years of his life, he wrote a book called Ihya al-Sunnah wa Ikhmad al-Bid'ah.
Hmm.
Okay, which it is the reviving of the Sunnah and the destruction of innovation.
Hmm.
And if you read that book, it reads like a Salafi book.
Hmm.
But literally, what he's doing is that he is rooting out the evils within Hausa land, social problems, family problems, all the different issues, and he's using Islamic scholarship in order to root this out. And he especially went against bid'ah. So when he's using bid'ah, he's not talking about it just in a theoretical sense, of how you make salat. He was talking about innovations in lifestyle.
Hmm.
Very practical scholar that he was.
Hmm.
At the same time, he reaches this spirituality, especially by toward the end of his life, where he's considered to be the highest level of tasawwuf.
Hmm.
So it is rare that you find somebody, who has the ability on both ends and actually, refuses to be called the Mahdi,
Hmm.
refuses
Yeah.
to be said that he flies to Mecca, spirit. He refused all of that.
Right. Hmm.
And,
Hmm.
and he focused his tasawwuf was a sober form of tasawwuf, and he focused on a tasawwuf lit takhalluq, and that is
Hmm.
for character.
Right.
And he would not introduce his followers to higher levels of spirituality until their character was developed, their fiqh was developed, and they were actually implementing spirituality in their lifestyle in a practical way.
Hmm.
I haven't found really anybody on the ground that I can access, his life.
Hmm.
Scholars wrote extensively about his life,
Yeah. Are
and
there any? Um, Go
yeah,
ahead. Continue. I'm sorry, Shay.
yeah. So, I literally became his murid in a sense. I was following him
Mm.
completely, and when they talk about his biography, he's a young man coming into the field at 20 years old. The scholars are there in front of him, and so what did he do? He used to make two rakats, and he used to make his intention, and then he would say, I would speak to people, whether it's common people, scholars, all the same, because I'm doing it for Allah.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave me strength to go out and face 1,000 people on Jumu'ah,
MashaAllah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
all schools of thought, all nationalities,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to bring that balance,
Right.
within his life. And,
Mm-hmm.
and, and so, I focused on the first part of his life. his life is in three sections. From 1774 to 1804, this is when he traveled, he did dawah, he taught. And so my thesis is dealing with social intellectual history. That's how you approach it as a historian.
Right.
Because he affected the social intellectual history of the people of Hausaland. Okay? But what he was doing, he was teaching the usul to the masses of the people, and he would talk to them in poetry in their languages. He spoke, Hausa language, Fulani, Fufulde. He spoke Tamashek, the language of the Tuareg, and he would do poetry to the people on the streets. He was correcting bid'ah in Hausa land. He was confronting extremism among the scholars. He was uplifting and educating women. And he was confronting power. Now, that's something which is so relevant to us today on the ground. The second part of his life, from 1804 to 1810, this is what he's known by the Orientalists as, because that is when, he was traveling with 1,000 students. And the corrupted kings tried to assassinate him, made a type of hijrah, a type of migration. They attacked him. He had a type of battle of Bedr, a small group defeating a large group. And they opened up 250,000 square miles. They governed them with Sharia for 100 years before the coming of the British. So this is not far away.
Right.
And that's the reason why the people of Hausaland remember him up until today. The last part of his life, from 1810 to 1817, this is really the expansion and consolidation, of the Khilafat, because they called their thing the Sokoto Khilafat. And so that's when they, consolidated, and his writings follow the different phases of his life. But in the last phase, he decided to leave the political part. And he said, I've done my job. Choose an emir. So they had a shura, and they chose his son, Muhammad Bello, to be, the leader of Sokoto. And the sheikh spent the rest of his life teaching. That's when he went to the higher levels of spirituality.
Right.
With specialized students, you see? So it doesn't get out of control.
Right.
Where people are going outside of Islam with their spirituality. But that's what he did in the last phase of his life. And he died in 1817 at 63 years old. Sunnah.
Right.
Sunnah so much. He even died at 63 years old.
Nice. Yeah, it's about the same age as the Prophet ﷺ, right?
So there is so much to learn from his life. So many. I implemented his life on the minbar, literally. And it's amazing.